We've got a terrific guest for you guys today. I'm really excited about this as we're getting the chance to bring you a conversation with an actor who has appeared in The Mandalorian and is reprising her role, I should say. This is the big news that came out recently, reprising the role on the upcoming Ahsoka series. Joining us on the Force Geeks podcast is a truly multi-talented force of nature. She's a martial artist, stunt performer, an actress, a writer, a director, and even a children's book author. She has appeared in numerous films and TV shows over the course of her career, worked on them, but for Star Wars fans, she is perhaps best known for her role as the Magistrate, Morgan Elsbeth, who appeared in the second season of The Mandalorian in the episode titled The Jedi. In addition to her work in the Star Wars universe, she has also worked on other major franchises such as The Fast and Furious, Star Trek, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, so much stuff out there. Beyond her on-screen work, she is a highly respected martial artist. Please welcome the Magistrate herself, Diana Lee Inosanto, to the podcast. Diana, thank you so much for making time for us.
Yay! So cool to meet you.
Beautiful welcome. Thank you.
You have such an interesting career to follow with everything that's going on, and I want to follow the ebbs and the flows and everything. We're obviously a Star Wars show, so we're going to talk a lot about Star Wars because, hey, that's what we do. But
Yes.
you are all in. You got your Empire Strikes Back shirt on.
That's
you were one of
right.
us.
Yes.
I love this. I love this. What age were you when you first became associated or knew about Star Wars?
Oh, 10. I was at an international martial arts camp with my father, and it was in Aspen, Colorado, and there were people from all over the world coming to see my dad and some of the other, renowned martial artists for that time. And everybody decided, because Aspen at that time was not the Aspen that we know today. It was really kind of a small town kind of feeling to it. And it was a Saturday night, and everybody wanted to go to the local movie theater and see this project or this movie called Star Wars, right? And I'd seen some of the trailers. I'm like going, wow, that looks cool. Yes, let's go see this, Dad. I went with my mom, my brother, and the whole theater was packed. And I tell you, that feeling watching Star Wars, I had never experienced something like the tone of it. And before even the movie was ending, people were jumping out of their seats like a rock concert. And just the energy. I mean, it was electric. It was just incredible, and people were just screaming. And I'll never forget that feeling. And even with my father, after we were done seeing the film, I mean, it was awesome because my dad was just like full of energy. Like, can you imagine, honey? He's talking to my mom, like, can you imagine? I bet you they could do, fight scenes with 2 lightsabers, and, he was starting to let his own creativity go. And then funny, when we returned back to California where we lived, he would go, come on, honey, to my brother and I, and he's like, here, and he bought later on these like sort of plastic telescope looking lightsabers. We've all seen.
I had one. Yep. I know what you're talking about.
Yes, you're right. Okay. And he would just kind of go and flow with me with two of them. Talk about foreshadow.
No kidding.
Yeah. And so I've always trained weaponry with 2 weapons, and I know how to do two weapons as well at the same time. So, I mean, I do staff, I do many other forms of weaponry, but that was my bread and butter as a martial artist. So it's so weird that later on as an adult, I would have this fight scene with Rosario, and it was pretty much what my dad had trained me for. And, it was just incredible.
What I think is so fun too about that episode that you were in, Diana, and again, it was from season 2, The Jedi, and Ahsoka is brought into live action at this point. It is a pivotal episode that you are a part of. And I know from an interview that you talked before that you didn't even know what your character's name was. And the big hubbub afterward is, hey, Baby Yoda has a name. It's Grogu, but you got a name as well when you got to watch this episode. Tell me about that experience.
Yeah, I mean, it was just so surreal because you got to remember when I filmed, for The Mandalorian, literally I'm on the set, and it already feels so surreal for me as a fan that I'm there. In a way, I was like, God, I feel like I snuck in here somehow and got this role, and I'm meeting all these people. And then, once we were done, once I wrapped, several weeks later, we're on lockdown, right? And then I tell you, my brain was kind of doing a number on me. Like, did that really happen? Was I really there? So finally, when The Mandalorian season 2 came about, I tell you, in my episode, it still didn't feel real to me. And what made it real for me finally was honestly seeing the reaction of people like you, all the podcasts, all the fans. It made me feel finally connected, like, wow, this is real, this is happening. And then to see the joy, to see people applauding the show, and particularly that episode, because that was really pivotal for even Dave Filoni, because it was about really showcasing Ahsoka and people really take to that. And the fact that that show, like, it was nominated for an Emmy, it was nominated for a Golden Globe. I mean, to get that kind of accolades is incredible. And John and Dave, I mean, oh my gosh, those guys have just changed my life. And Kathleen Kennedy as well. The whole family of Lucasfilm. I mean, I'm just so grateful. But yeah, they kept it a secret that I had a name.
That must be quite an experience to like be a part of something that is basically a cultural phenomenon. As much as anything else, really. Like Star Wars is just huge.
Yeah, it was
in so many ways.
Yeah, it's true. And it's stunning still to me when I think about it, because I'm a late bloomer. I mean, even though I've been around the business since 1987, actually I was, as a little girl, I was around Uncle Bruce. I was around once in a while movie stars like Steve McQueen and James Coburn, because they were part of the martial arts community as around my dad. But honestly, working and being in the forefront, this has all been strange for me, because I've always been more of service behind the scenes, whether to survive, I had to be a stunt woman because I had a son with autism. And even then I've been a trainer to the stars. So to finally just have this moment to be part of a cast and to be able to be part of the storytelling machine for Dave Filoni and John Favreau, and it's just mind-boggling, guys. That's all I can tell you. It's just mind-boggling.
You touched on so many things I'm excited to talk about. One, your family connection with martial arts, your father, your history with it, your work that you've done that has taken you in front of the camera once again. And beyond that, I also want to dig into just everything involved with your role from The Mandalorian to what you're doing with Ahsoka, as much as we can talk about at this point, because we're all well aware of the famous secrecy that is held tightly by Lucasfilm, and we want to respect that.
Yeah.
And make it so that you talk to us again. So with that, tell me about Celebration. That was such a cool experience to watch you and Ivanna up there. She had glowing things to say about you and who you are. From everything I've seen of you in your interviews, and then even watching The Sensei, the movie that you wrote, directed, and starred in, you strike me taking on all these different matters. You seem like a very empathetic person to me that just comes through. And she was so complimentary to you, even though you guys were the baddies on set.
That was a great quote.
It was. Yes. It was
great. We have a nickname for our group, both Ivanna and I, Ray and Lars. We're called the Bond of the Baddies.
Nice.
That's awesome.
The Bond of the Baddies. Yeah, I always say, like, they should do, or my husband brought this idea. He goes, you guys should do what was that Queen album where you have like the different four faces?
The faces, yes.
And we were actually very close. But I mean, Ivanna and I tell you, I love this woman so much. My nickname for her is Heart and Soul.
Yeah.
Because she is, and she's from Ukraine, and we all know what's happening over there.
Yes.
And so we talked about what's happening, and she has been so grounded despite what's going on. This woman, I can't say enough about this young lady. I always tell her, like, if I had a daughter, I would be so honored if she was like Yvonne, because she is young enough to be my daughter. So, but
baby sister.
Or baby sister. Why not?
That's what we're going with.
Please, but seriously, she's incredible. And the fact that we could share this together and have that moment on stage, holding hands and, being introduced.
Was this your first celebration?
It is.
So tell me about that. Yeah.
I kind of got the news about a month before that I would be going to Celebration, because I honestly didn't know if they were going to try to keep me a secret till whenever they were going to announce it. I didn't even know they were going to announce it in August, honestly. And I was like going, oh, thank goodness. And then I just cried a mountain of tears, and I was so excited. And then I just thought, okay, hold it together. And literally when I got off the plane in London, I'm in the car with my husband and my manager and our driver. And all of a sudden we're getting texts from friends going, oh, congratulations, Diana's an Ahsoka. And I'm like, it's a trap. They're just guessing. Somebody that's trying to leak stuff. It's a trap. Don't answer it. And then all of a sudden we start getting more, messages. And all of a sudden there's the trailer. And I'm like, there's a trailer? There's a trailer?
Yep.
And to see that trailer and the beautiful music accompanying it and just how magnificent everybody in the cast looked, the editing, I was screaming joy, and I'm sure I scared my driver, but he was like, oh, I get to witness this. I get to witness this. But then the next day came, and to just all be united in the green room. And I'm seeing members from Andor. I'm seeing members from Acolyte. I met Denise. I'm meeting Andy. I'm just going, holy smokes. It's just one big Star Wars family gathering, and it was just so surreal. And then, a lot of us hadn't seen each other since we were filming on the set of Ahsoka. And it was just beautiful. John was there, Kathleen, and of course, Dave Filoni. And it was just a magical thing. And then we could hear the audience, the roar. It's like a rock concert.
It's intense. Yeah.
It is intense. And I had not had really that sensation, honestly, since the time I was a little girl in that movie theater. So now this was even more electrifying. And to see how the Star Wars universe, the Star Wars fans have grown, it really is incredible. And especially coming out of the pandemic, guys, you guys know. So yeah, that was pretty powerful for all of us to see Lars. I mean, did you see Lars's face? He was like, holy smokes. I don't think any of us truly understood the power and the energy of what this would bring for all of us, for me, for Lars, for Ray, Ivanna, and all the other members of our Star Wars family. It truly was amazing. And of course, Rosario, she's amazing. Mary, Natasha, they're handling, because they had already done Star Wars Celebration. Right. They're pros. They're black belts at this. So yeah, it was.
And Diana, when those doors open, I mean, obviously, I've never been to one, especially on your side. When you're walking out, you can't really tell how much. But like, when did it hit you? Like when you turned around and like got to the circle?
Yeah,
we could like
hear before the doors open. They're like, "Oh, be careful! There's going to be fog." Blah blah blah. And then all of a sudden, we can hear something. The power of just sound alone. We're like, "Wow!" And so Yvonne and I just held hands. Those doors open, and just that energy that greets you. There's nothing like it, guys.
That's got to be strange too, to do an interview where there's so much like a fever pitch of excitement, and doing it live in front of a huge audience like that. Yeah. I have to imagine like that adds a little pressure to the game of like, what can I tell these folks that are just feverish for what's coming?
For me, I can't speak for Ivana, but for me, I think actually I can maybe can say this. I think the pure joy just carried us, because now it just felt like we were part of a much bigger family. And we wanted to say what was going on. Even when we were doing the Ahsoka panel, like, I don't know if you saw the photo of us. My favorite photo is the one and Rosario was the one who had the brilliant idea. She goes, let's get out of this table. Let's go sit on the floor with everybody else. And there's that picture of all of us with everybody behind us.
Yeah.
And it's just to watch the secret trailer.
Such a great photo.
I mean, it's my favorite photo, because this is what it was all about, becoming part of a much bigger Star Wars family. And we were right. And I love having all the fans right there behind us with us. It was
Star Wars is family.
It definitely is. And with your first role with Star Wars, when it came to The Mandalorian season 2, was that your first brush with Star Wars, Lucasfilm? I mean, I've read a few interesting things, but was that the first time you got to work with it?
Yes. Yeah, okay. It was. It absolutely was.
And where were you when you found out that you got this role, and how did it come about? What did you do when you found out?
I was in the middle of some tile, and I was looking for tile for my
Perfect. Why wouldn't you be there?
Yep.
I'm getting this call from my manager, like, they want you, and I'm like, what? And then this other customer is going, what the heck is wrong with this woman? And I'm like, oh my God. And then I knew I couldn't even say what it was that I was going to be in. I had to go outdoors. I'm like, you know? I'm thinking like I'm a mad woman, I'm sure. Yeah, it's just again, I'm repeating myself, but it's just an extraordinary feeling. And I cried. I cried even auditioning, to be honest with you,
Yeah.
you guys. I mean, just the honor of auditioning for the Star Wars franchise and for Lucasfilm. Because I knew how much it meant to me as growing up, even as a teenager. Listen, I think I was sharing earlier with you guys, like I actually had to kind of hide from all my fellow cheerleading friends that I was a geek.
Yeah.
I mean, I had all John Williams Star Wars albums, you know.
You were. That's great. That is definitely geekdom, and I appreciate it.
Yeah,
Yep.
I secretly played, you know, I have a group of friends, they're called the D&D boys, Dungeons and Dragons. I used to play Dungeons and Dragons till 4 or 5 in the morning. I didn't know any other women that did that, you know, and I kind of was like, my girlfriends were not going to understand this, you know, but yeah.
Sure.
You are one of us. I love it.
Yes, I so was. So to be able to audition, and I actually thought it was a joke at first when my manager called me, because he was, first of all, we're friends.
Yeah.
But he was trying to at least, you know, at least represent me out there if he could as a producer and as a director. And even then I wasn't winning, you know. It was kind of rough. And so when he said, you know, there's some producers and they're saying that they know who you are and they want you to audition, I'm like, I don't know anybody involved with Mandalorian. That's crazy. This has got to be a joke. And then he's like, let me see if this is real. And he figured out that, yeah, the casting, you know, Sarah Finn's office, yeah, they're real. And I had to sign an NDA before I could even look at the sides.
Yeah.
And I was by myself in my home with my son who has autism. My husband was away overseas teaching martial arts in Italy. And I'm like, I have no one to help me prepare for this role but myself. I really had to fall back on my theater roots. And luckily with my son, with his autism, he likes to repeat things over and over. So I had to go over lines because the sides are so well disguised. You would never know in a million years you're reading Star Wars. Never. And I did my own research, and I had like lines going, even when I was sleeping. I would wake up in the morning and come up with new, fresh ideas because I was playing the lines over and over on a tape that I could just get it in me. And then I just thought the one thing I hope is that when I walk in those doors, when I audition, they at least will say, oh yeah, she's definitely an actress. She can act. Because so many people want to kind of look at are distracted by the fact that I'm a physical woman, that I've done martial arts and stunt work, and oh, she must not be an actress. And they don't realize I've had years of training, especially through my aunt and other teachers. And
some big name teachers too at that.
Yes. Yeah, that was all because of the guidance of my aunt, Lilia Inosanto, also known as Lona Nye, back in the days of old Hollywood in the 70s. And I just thought, I just want them to know I can really act. This is really part of my DNA. So, and I cried. It was just an honor to audition. I didn't honestly think I would be chosen. Honestly, I just thought, because I couldn't even get an agent at that time. Couldn't even get an agent. And so when I got the role, yeah, that's
who you are, just representing in this interview, who you are here is not even close to who you are in this show. You are menacing in the show. It was just like, it is a night and day, a switch flips. It is clear that you could act so well because you are intimidating in this role. It is something else.
Thank you for loving to hate me. Yes.
I showed my son yesterday the clip because I was like, he was asking me what I was doing. I was like, oh, I'm gonna be talking to her, you know, tomorrow. And he's like, wow.
I know.
He's 9 right now, and he's just getting into Star Wars like full on, and he was just like that.
My 5-year-old
what did she
said,
do? What about
scary.
the lightsaber? Yeah. He said that.
Yeah, my neighbors were saying that too. They're like, "Wow, I didn't expect that out of you." You know? Yeah, that's because of years of theater arts training and Shakespeare. Love Shakespeare. Yeah.
There it is. How did you approach this role? Because you are playing someone that is so vastly different from who you are as a person. Clearly, the training comes into play. But what do you do to approach that, to be that menacing force?
Right away, I sensed from the pages that I was reading that this was a menacing, manipulative woman, but she's a woman of power. So at first I started looking at history. I started looking at people like Julius Caesar. I started looking at Catherine the Great. I mean, this comes from my theater training, and
Mhm.
and then I started looking at some of the archetypes potentially that we've seen who have been antagonists in the Star Wars universe. I started just kind of getting an understanding of the flavor of and the approach of the villains. I mean, going all the way to like Spartacus, the Empire,
Yes.
right? And I thought, I think I'm going to tap in and see if I can, and luckily I have relatives that live in England. So I'm like, maybe I'll tap into some, like a sort of a mid-Atlantic British sort of speech pattern to this woman, and just see if it works, and really, I literally write a backstory to the character of how I came into power, not knowing if that was really truly how she got into power.
Mhm.
But just something to give me a foundation. So at least when I go into the auditioning room, I have a history of what it is to be a powerful woman who may have started out good, but then all of a sudden she's become greedy and she's lived on learning to manipulate people and being powerful and not caring for other people, and because she has her own motivations. So yeah, that was kind of pretty much where it started.
What was it like to sit in the makeup chair first day on set? And was there someone who was particularly welcoming to you? You're kind of joining the club at this point. It could be a little awkward the first day of school vibes, all that stuff.
So yes, one of the first people I met on the set was Katie Sackhoff.
No way.
Yes.
So I, they sent me for whatever reasons they wanted to test wigs and makeup and all this,
Right.
and I did. I felt like the new kid in a school, and I'm sitting there, or actually they might have been standing around. They're like, "Oh, here, just go sit right here," and I'm just sitting there in this chair on the very far end of the makeup and hair trailer, not knowing really anybody, and then all of a sudden I hear this voice, and I see this beautiful actress sitting right next to me, and she goes, "Hi, I'm Katie. Who are you? What's your name?" And I'm like, "Oh, and I'm Diana," and it felt like two kids in the cafeteria learning.
I would have been speechless personally, so you did well.
Yeah, and she was just so warm and welcoming, and I just so loved, that she was really just there to, greet me or just to talk to me. And then later on, I was being, shuffled up to another floor to meet Pedro. So
Nice.
it was overwhelming. Then I saw, Rosario coming in, so it was just quite overwhelming, to be honest with you guys.
What an amazing experience. It's so fun that's it's always nice to hear when it's a welcoming experience right off the bat, because you are the new kid at school. So that's great.
Yeah. Well, I will tell you this, the first person, even, aside from the members of the cast and the Star Wars universe, it was really Jon Favreau that came to greet me when I first arrived.
What's your impression of him when you're first getting the chance to work with him? What is he like? I know that he's an actor, obviously. He's a creator. He's the director. He's the writer, all these things, which I know you can appreciate putting yourself in those same shoes.
Yeah, he's my hero. He had me at Swingers,
Amen.
Yes.
Amen.
One of Nate's favorites.
Yep.
And then I remember him from Rudy. And
yes.
He was one of the first actors in the business from the indie filmmaking world to give me hope that maybe there's a good probability that if I have the courage to write and direct and star in my own project, that maybe I could have a possible career.
Yeah.
Because of people like Jon Favreau, others, Kenneth Branagh. I think Taika Waititi is in that same boat. My godfather, couldn't get a break in Hollywood, and he went back to Hong Kong and he did these small budget films. And so it's and John, to me, was an example of that. So when my first day ever to go to the studio, I was being greeted in the lobby by Jon Favreau. I was being told to work with the stunt team, but I was John that actually greeted me. And I'm like, oh my God, here is my hero. I didn't know he was going to be there that day. And then all of a sudden he escorts me through the hallways and he's like, oh, this is where we mainly film in this building. Oh, let me take you to the volume, which was overwhelming, guys, because I always use I use the term, it's like NASA. I mean, you see all these monitors and all of the ILM got people, and I'm just going, what? Wow, because this was the latest, greatest technology. And it's so overwhelming. And then he's escorting me through, and by that time I'm on the set and they were filming, I think the first episode 1, where there's the arena. But at that point, all of a sudden I'm running into Robert Rodriguez, and then there's Dave Filoni, and I'm just trying not to have a meltdown, because I'm going, this feels like a dream now. This is all feeling like a dream. And Robert was familiar with me because he had a show called Man at Arms. So I had appeared on that. And he's like, what are you doing here? And, and then John and Dave are like, you guys know each other? And yeah, it was really a weird experience that fate all had us kind of being there in that moment there. And then, John goes, well, I'm going to leave this up to Dave, or I can't remember what his words were. And then Dave kind of looks at me because I think he could tell that I'm just like, huh?
Yeah.
It's really happening. And he goes, I'm sure you're wondering how we found you, right? And
yes.
I'm like, yes, yeah. And he goes, well, and then he explained the story that basically they knew he and John wanted to have somebody that really was truly a martial artist and who could hopefully act. And he basically said he was on the internet, he plugged in, women martial artists, and somehow it came to my photo and they clicked on it. He goes, oh, this is interesting. And it took him to my trailer for my movie, The Sensei. And that's how it all happened. And they're like, let's bring her in to read.
Yeah, you had some heavy stuff to act out in that movie as well, which, of course, you wrote that. So no doubt they got everything they were looking for. No doubt.
And more.
Yeah.
Yes.
I was stunned, I used to have to hide it that I was a artist. Honestly,
you've touched upon your godfather and this connection. I want to talk about your father and his role with how things have conspired to put you where you are today. Talk to us about your family and that godfather connection you have.
So for some of you who might not be in the martial arts world, my father is Diana Inosanto, and he's one of the leading authorities of martial arts in general in the world. He started off really as a Kempo karate man when he was in the military. And then under the leadership of Ed Parker, I'm going to go back, I'm giving you a history lesson real quickly. Yeah. And Ed Parker is probably one of the most important people in martial arts history in our country, because he is the one that really came up with the tournament circuit, which later rolled out, introducing my godfather, the late Bruce Lee, at the Long Beach Championships, where my father would meet Uncle Bruce and have to kind of escort him around LA. And from that meeting, they became dear friends. And my father saw something special in Uncle Bruce because he loved his philosophy. You have to remember, in the 1960s, nobody was cross-training in other martial arts. You kind of had to stick, like if you were a Korean martial artist, you just did Korean. If you were, Japanese martial arts, you just did Japanese and Chinese. Whereas my godfather was like, no, we need to empty our cups, meaning being open-minded. We need to share information. And we also need to share information culturally to help bridge people together. And my father just loved this. And so they became dear friends. And from there on, he was training under my godfather, became one of his lead instructors. And they had he helped operate the Chinatown School in Los Angeles. Wow. And from there, I was born in 1960s. I want to say 60s. Yeah, in the 60s. And I grew up in a martial arts family. I grew up meeting some of the who's who of every style and system. In fact, my father has been instrumental in introducing new martial arts styles and systems from all over the world into this country, and by helping them with immigration letters. And and so I'm pretty lucky to have witnessed all that. I didn't realize how special that was back then. But it would shape me as a woman, because both philosophically and culturally, because at the Chinatown School in those days, it was like the United Nations, people from all different backgrounds were there. And I was very lucky to have that, because we're still coming out of the civil rights movement. So very lucky.
Well, Nate, real quick. I just loved, I had watched prior to this a few days ago, your sit down chat with Shannon. And like, and because and that wasn't really even Star Wars. This was all family and martial arts and just your culture coming up. And that's what really intrigued me. It's just like you said, that you guys, like, yeah, obviously Bruce and everyone wanted to be around him, but you guys are just running around the house like it's family. Like that's just that, and I come from an Asian background. My dad's
That's right. You're
Japanese.
Papa Holly like me.
I am. My dad, and I kind of took that to heart because my dad's 80 something now. He's 87, but my dad was 5 in the internment camps here in
Oh yeah,
California.
sure. Oh yeah.
And with my son being born, I just wanted to make sure I documented that for him. You know, so that he hears it from his grandfather.
Oh yeah.
And so that just really hit me. I just wanted to bring that up because that was, you know, everyone has their own little tidbits that they take from interviews, and that the culture, the family, and that's why I told Nate I was really excited to have you on. Just
I'm so glad
so
you
down to
mentioned
earth.
that. So one of the 3 top instructors under my godfather, so it was my father, who was more LA, Los Angeles grounded, and then there was James Lee, who is more of the Oakland, San Francisco area, and then the other person was Taki Komura, who was Japanese American and was in the internment camps. And my godfather was so instrumental in helping shape his confidence more because, you know, I mean, it was so heartbreaking what he saw, you know. And so, I mean, I feel my godfather was really about helping to lift people up despite whatever personal past trauma they might have had in their time growing up. And you see that over and over in my father. I mean, at the Chinatown school with my dad and Uncle Bruce in that group. So, or in their organization going from LA all the way up to Seattle, which is where Taki Komura was. I mean, you had people coming out of the Japanese internment camps here in America. There were the Haber brothers that were Holocaust survivors from World War II Germany. I mean, you had all kinds of people just who had so much pain, almost like what we see in Star Wars, right? Where you have the characters have traumatic backgrounds. And then Uncle Bruce was really there to bring people together and lift people up in spirit. I knew my dad had another dear friend who was a Vietnam vet named Larry Hartzell, and he had been in a terrible accident and he couldn't kick anymore. And so Uncle Bruce was the one to encourage him, like, you're going to now get into grappling. You know, we're going to learn to adjust your training. That's why learning to train in different styles and systems and seeing what their fortes and accent and emphasis was very important to the individual. So so that's what was really cool about being around that world.
How did the martial arts influence your career? Because I have the feeling that you intended to be an actress first, but this is kind of where you came, because you talked about that, about how you were a mom, you have an autistic son, you got to put food on the table and do these things. How did the martial arts impact your career?
So I will say this, you know, yes, I definitely wanted to be an actress first, and I trained for many long time with different people where my aunt would guide me to. But I just found back when I was starting in Hollywood in the 80s and 90s, nobody would cast my type, you know, and they didn't know what to do with me because, you know, I'm Hapa Holly or mixed, right? You're like, you're not white enough. You look a little too exotic, and you're not looking too Asian. Can't do that. You look a little Spanish, but you don't speak Spanish. I mean, I could not get a break anywhere. But for whatever reason, my martial arts heritage would serve me culturally in Hollywood, and I could. And it was really doubling for Sarah Michelle Gellar, truly, where I got my big break for Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And Joss Whedon brought me in, and the stunt coordinator brought me in because they saw me move. And, you know, both Sarah and I had similar body types, and they put a wig, and I was her first, you know, double, actually. We
Such a great show.
Wow.
So they're not even the pilot. We had to first do the presentation. In fact, I think that's still floating around YouTube somewhere. And then there was a different Willow even cast. There was different actors cast for Willow. And I just thought, wow, this is pretty amazing. I think Sarah at that time was maybe 19 years old. I mean, she was coming out of getting, like, I think, an Emmy award for the soap opera she was doing at that time. And that's kind of how my journey began. And then I will say I locked arms with another fellow stunt woman named Trish Peters. She did more of the gymnastics portion, and I was in charge of getting banged up and thrown around and doing martial arts. And then from there, I went on doing Walker, Texas Ranger, Face Off. I mean, it just kind of spiraled from there.
That's awesome.
Working with John Woo. This is a legendary director. Tell me about that experience.
John Woo, to me, is a great role model as far as being a caring, kind director. I mean, it was one of the first times I actually experienced the director that every time I did a stunt, he would get out of his chair and literally walk up and say, "Hey, you good?" You know, or he would check in on me. And this is with everyone. And I love that kind of leadership on a set, because to me, it flows down and it creates great morale. I mean, Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau are that way. And all the other directors that they choose, they really care about their cast and their crew. And I think that's the kind of leadership I love. And that's the kind of leadership I would, want to continue to provide, even as a director producer. And that's needed in Hollywood, because I've seen in my years as a stunt woman, or I've heard horror stories of some sets that are not like that, and where the director didn't really care. It's like, okay, do this scene and move on, but John Woo to me was magnificent and caring, first of all, about the well-being of everyone. And yeah, it was an honor to work on his set.
And he was breaking ground too here in the States, in Hollywood, coming over from Asia and being a force of nature out there and bringing his style here.
And Chow Yun Fat movies,
exactly. Chow Yun Fat was the man. We were watching those movies, Jake and I, back in the day in high school. Loved those movies. But beyond that, I want to talk to you about inclusivity in Hollywood today. We're coming off a big moment after the Oscars where we saw some major wins for Asian actors. You talking about kind of in this world, in that world, and how that caused problems for you. I know the inclusivity, and this being Asian American Pacific Islander month, the month of May, you've been involved at the forefront in advocacy. And I'd love to know about your passion for that and how you see things moving forward from here.
In regards to the Asian,
breaking the barriers, finding more roles, and just bringing in more representation.
Yeah, and I think it's really about having the courage to speak up and share, like, this is what we're dealing with. I noticed that times I've had wonderful producing friends that didn't, in hindsight, they weren't realizing that systemically there was a problem. And I can't just say this for Asian Americans. I would say this for African Americans, Hispanic Americans, people who are maybe disabled. I just, I'm looking forward now more and more as we're seeing more stories being told from people of different communities. And I think it's important because it speaks to it speaks to a bigger America that we are all part of. And, so yeah, I definitely, in earlier days, I felt I maybe in my own way would, try to make a stand about. That's why I did the Sensei. I wanted to show a family, an American family who was a mixture, Asian, and also I wanted to tap into the LGBTQ issues, because as a martial artist, I was stunned at some of the places I went to across the country. They couldn't, some of the school teachers I knew were frightened about allowing somebody from a different community, like if somebody who was gay, they weren't sure if they should accept that person. And I just thought, oh my God, because they were afraid of retaliation from their local community. And I just thought storytelling through film or through music or TV allows us to, also share, do a spotlight, and to be able to express, like, these are big issues. And so, yeah, I think through my work, I've tried to be an activist. And then, of course, I've had, I've been to the White House during Filipino History Month. We were trying to really get the word out among, to people and members of Congress about Filipino vets that served during World War II, and they weren't getting their due, and they weren't getting taken care of, despite, sacrificing their lives for, the greater good of, democracy. I mean, yeah, I've made it my life mission, and I'm following in my grandparents', shoes, because they were activists during the time of the Great Depression. My grandfather established one of the first farm unions in the state of California, along with his other colleagues. And, he would address, like, how difficult it was particularly for Filipino farmers to survive. They were sleeping in little huts and on dirt, floors, and, starving, but yet my grandfather was so important. He would bring home homeless people and feed them. He knew how to assemble hunger lines. He would, sterilize trash cans. And because he was a farmer, he would grab vegetables and they would cook, have soup lines. And it's somehow in my blood, I guess.
And is that the one you were saying that was in Stockton, if I remember correctly?
Stockton, yeah, Stockton, California.
Yeah, I was just down there a week ago. I'm up in Sacramento, but from the Bay Area, from
Sacramento.
Berkeley, so
Okay,
I was
there's a lot of history. In fact, if you go to the Filipino museum in Stockton, you'll see my grandparents on those walls. Yeah.
Oh,
very cool.
Out.
Yeah,
it's awesome.
I also want to talk about something else that's near and dear to your heart, and that would be being a mom. And you wrote a book, a child's book. Tell me about that and the inspiration. You've talked about your son having autism, but tell me about that.
Yeah, I mean, my son now, he's 32 years old, and he's we talked about inclusion, all right, and for him, he's an artist, and I'm like watching him. He's so talented, and I thought, let's do something together, son. Let's in a fun way tell our story. And so I teamed up with him, and I said, I'll kind of outline a story, and I kind of gave him stick figures of the composition, and I said, draw me a picture and let's just put this out in the zeitgeist, and see what happens. And because you don't hear a lot of stories about what it is to be I guess, an autism family, right? And so it's called The Curious Mind of Sebastian. It's about him, and he's known as SG Inosanto. And we're going to do some more books too as well. We're trying to think of some other storylines. But it's just important. I guess, again, this is another level of activism, is really telling stories about, even to families out there that, hey, there are families like mine that exist. And I just want you to know, this is what autism is. And I'm glad we did it. I did my first Comic-Con, what was it, a year back in 2021 in Chicago. And I was amazed how many families who have autistic children. I even had some, people who are fans who are on the spectrum, and they were just kind of reaching out to me. And I love having that connection with them. I really do.
Well, this connection that we all share, for us, it's around Star Wars and everything you've done. And I saw something that you met Tamora Morrison back in the day. Is that correct? Back in the 90s?
Mhm.
Tell me about that and just that strange connection to Star Wars there.
Okay, so my husband, Ron Balicki, who also is a choreographer, stunt coordinator, and an amazing martial artist, primarily under my father, he was already training Tamora Morrison for a movie called Barbed Wire.
Yep.
With Pamela Anderson. And this is kind of actually how I got my foot in the door as a stunt woman. And he was training Tamora, I would say, for I think 4 to 6 months. It was pretty intense, And there was a role for, I think it was like the security guard or something like that. It was originally meant for a man. And on a day that Tamora and Ron were demonstrating the choreography, there was a little hang up or something, and they asked me to do the role of the other security guy. And I went up there and did it, and then thinking nothing of it, because I was just trying to help my future husband, because we were engaged. And then all of a sudden, the producers later went up to Ron and said, would your fiance want to be in Barbed Wire and do this fight scene with Tamora? And he's like, maybe. And sure enough, I'm like, yeah, I'm in, absolutely. And it was so great to do this fight scene with Tamora. I mean, he's so funny, he started off as a comedian.
I did not know that.
I did not know that either.
He was never supposed to have the role of Jake, and it was actually supposed to be a different actor, I believe, if I understand this correctly. And for whatever reason, the other actor couldn't do it, so it was Tamora that was put in that role. But he actually, from my understanding, was a comedian or had a comic background. So he's such a force of nature. I mean, he's so funny. I mean, you watch him on Star Wars Celebration.
Yes. Yeah.
He gets that clown.
You could see it now. I mean, yeah.
I mean, he's amazing. I love Tamora, and the fact that we have this long history with him.
Yeah.
So
That's a cool connection. Are there any memories, and they're maybe hard to pinpoint, and I'm putting you on the spot here. Is there any memories or favorite Star Wars moments from the projects that you've worked on so far? And granted, you might not be able to say what if that's the case, but is there something that stands out to you that you can share at this point?
A favorite moment for me.
Yes. Yep. For you.
Oh my God. Oh
I know.
God.
And you might
I
not
wish
be able to say.
Ahsoka was out there. And let's see. A favorite moment, because I have so many favorite moments. You know, I already told you about, you know, being able to sit on the stage watching
Yeah.
the trailer with the fans. That actually, I do love that
That
moment.
definitely qualifies.
It
Yeah.
definitely
Yeah.
qualifies.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Yeah.
as far as being on the set, there was a moment when they were testing hair and makeup, and they had me do it at the same time with Rosario. And so it was really my first time really to just be there with Rosario. And she goes, "How you doing?" And I'm like,
Oh, that's
"I'm good." And we're
Yeah.
just standing there on the stage, and all the crew is behind us, and they're doing their light. And there was just this moment. I think we both had like, wow, we're two women that are going to be the first in live action to do a magnificent fight scene together. And then two women technically of color, I guess. And
yeah.
even though we're part of the, you know, greater global family, and I think we both were just kind of taking this in, and to be able to lock arms with this woman, you know, because Rosario is so special, and she's so kind, and she's such a force of nature in her own way. You know, this woman comes from a place of love and strength. And that was a magnificent moment for me. The other moment was just meeting George Lucas.
Wow.
That was
I
Not too
forgot he was
shabby.
there. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. In fact,
Yeah.
I didn't know if I could really talk that much about it until John Favreau brought that up at the Ahsoka panel. I'm like, oh my God, he's bringing this up that I'm at George Lucas on the day I was doing my fight scene
Wow.
with Rosario and Kathleen Kennedy, and Doug was there, and they were great. They were there to visit the set. I think, you know, George and Dave obviously are very tight. Everybody's like a family, and they just, for whatever reason, he was there to support. And so to meet George, John was the one that did the introductions.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
again, it's having that surreal moment and meeting Kathleen. And I think George was said something like, "Okay, go ahead, more snap," and and then he starts going on about Kurosawa and his movies, and I'm like, I'm having George Lucas giving me a history lesson.
Right.
of Kurosawa. This is happening. I mean, it was just incredible. And I think John was, I can see John smiling, and Dave's
Yeah.
like, looking at the monitor, and it was just this surreal moment that these larger than life people are right here in front of me, and I get to share this special moment of just meeting everybody. That was something I will always take with me for sure.
All right,
Always.
I'm gonna put you on the spot now to the hard topics, because there's NDAs in place, there's all sorts of secrecy. What can you tell us about Morgan Elsbeth as we look to Ahsoka? What are we gonna know her better? What can you tell us at this point about what we can expect to see?
Well, yeah. Okay. So what I can tell you, you will definitely know more about Morgan's background for
Good.
sure.
Good.
For sure. You're going to know more about her background. And I will definitely say, and I think it's already pretty obvious, but I mean, she's completely loyal and dedicated to Thrawn. Very loyal and dedicated to Thrawn. And I think it will start to make more sense why she is, absolutely nothing will move her from being loyal to him. What else can I say? I think what people are I hope are going to be pleasantly surprised. I know I am as a fan, is how epic this is going to feel, especially for a streaming show. Get this on a big TV, people. Let it be your movie theaters.
Yes.
I almost
Yes.
wish. Yeah, it is so epic, so mythic. It is so filled with action. And yet, Star Wars again is always about family, and
Yep.
Dave Filoni talks about it's always about hope. And I think it's just going to resonate with all the things that we love about Star Wars from the very beginning, when we first saw the first Star Wars with Mark and Carrie and Harrison, and Harrison Ford, and I think you're gonna like that.
What would you say about the action sequences you've taken part in? What would you say? Like, you talked epic. Do you feel? I mean, are you coming out of those things really bruised up and battle worn? I mean, what's the deal with that?
Definitely. I will tell you this, we were like a football team, and yet,
That's awesome.
yet if you're a football player, and my dad worked with the Dallas Cowboys, so I think I can go into this, we had our bumps and bruises, you know what I mean? And we were working some intense hours for days. I mean, just to give you an idea, when I did Mandalorian, that was pretty much around a 17-hour day for us. And so collectively, it was incredible. All of us, the shape we had to get in, the months of training, and even me as a former stunt woman, as a martial artist, I mean, you had to train, and the action is incredible on this, and to have Min Q and her team design the choreography, I think you're going to see a lot different mix of flavor compared to maybe what we've seen before. I think I can say that. And she's amazing, and I'm hoping you guys will all be happy. I really do.
Well, I mean, personally for me, I mean, you've got the old school, Vader and Luke. You've got Darth Maul's, his Phantom Menace one. But I think, with you and Rosario's, I mean, even that small.
I want more
clip,
of the spear. I want to see the spear fight.
Yes.
The small clip that you guys did. I mean, you just talked about it a little bit ago, how like when you guys got on stage, you're like, whoa, like what it meant to you guys. But even as a viewer, it was epic. I mean, it's kind of a new age epic of how big this can be, not just for the symbolism of, two women leads, and all that, but I mean, you guys have those background. I mean, you have that background, and Rosario has the heart and passion of what she's doing.
And she's a natural athlete. You can do anything at Rosario. She's a natural athlete. So
and whether you can say or not, I just hope that that's a preview of what we get to see, in coming forward. Like, I want to see you bust out that spear and maybe a couple other weapons too. But
I'm hoping for, what are they? The shorts, the Screama sticks? Is that what I'm thinking of? Like one per hand going up against lightsaber.
Oh, you guys will see. Trust me.
Yeah, I'm so excited.
Talk about Dave and him heading, like, I know that John's involved, but this is Dave's vision. What was it like working with Dave on this? And what do you think that he, when he is, working on all this, what did you pick up from him and what he's bringing? What's the vibe he's bringing with everything?
He's so zen.
Yeah.
I say zen, meaning he is a calm, and you need that out of a director. I think and John is wired that same way. There's a calmness to them. So, and you need that. And yet he's so specific with his vision, and he can guide you, and he can tell you backstory and history. Because if there's questions you have about choices or why the character is there, I mean, he's like a walking encyclopedia. He can tell you, what's happening with this character, why this is happening, what your approach might be. And that's important, when you're an actress and you're hearing this from a director, that they're pretty crystal clear on the direction of where the scene is supposed to go, because X, Y, and Z is supposed to happen. Yeah. He's a magnificent director, and everybody just wants to just soldier and be there for him and to make this happen. I mean, honestly, we lock arms, and I'm not saying this as lip service. There is a really beautiful family element to the Lucas family, to Lucasfilm, to this Ahsoka set. It was incredible. I love every one of those crew members, everyone in ILM, everybody, hair, makeup, electricity, everybody there. It's incredible. And then John also was just a beautiful force walking through from set to set, because sometimes you had different units going at the same time. And I don't know how they held it together, but they do.
We can't wait to see you in this show. We're so glad you're coming back. We're short on time at this point, but I want to go through. We have a set of 7 questions we like to ask people. And it's putting yourself in the shoes of if you're a Jedi, that sort of thing. So let me roll through these, and it's the first thing that
Rapid
pops in
fire.
your head. It's a rapid fire deal.
Oh boy.
First question, no thinking, just answering.
Okay.
You're hanging out in a space cantina. Who are you? Are you a smuggler? Are you a hero? Who are you in that space
Chewbacca,
cantina?
man. Chewbacca.
All right.
Nice.
What's your lightsaber color?
Purple.
All right, I like it. Do you have a favorite quote from Star Wars?
Oh, shoot. Well, always may the force be with you.
Can't go
Always.
wrong with that.
Yes.
Let's say you're a pilot. What are you flying? What's your starship?
Destroyer.
The big one, bringing the big
Nice.
guns. I like it. Okay. Where do you stand? There's a theory out there that Jar Jar Binks was actually a Sith Lord and manipulating everything all the time and putting forward this I'm a bumbling oaf thing. Where do you stand on this theory? Do you like that idea, or do you think it's fine as is?
I think it's fine as is. I think it's fine as is.
Who is the true hero of Star Wars overall? Who's the overall true hero?
Always George Lucas.
There you go.
And your favorite Star Wars movie of all time, or series, as the case may be?
The original, man. The one that started it all.
I love it.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. Absolutely.
She is Diana Lee Inosanto, and she is simply terrific. Thank you so much for
Best.
joining us. We wish you
Yes,
well in
thank you.
all your pursuits. We look forward to seeing you on screen and back here again with us in the future, hopefully.
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Diana.
Thank you
This was
so
wonderful.
much.
Thank you very much.
You guys are amazing. Thank you.